Actually, I can kind of tell you how much camels are worth. This is kind of funny. Camels, I know this is like off topic, but I actually read a book describing Bedouin and Bedouin wealth, and it said that no man was considered wealthy who did not have at least 50 camels and a ton of other stuff if they lived in, or even considered like kind of decently off, like respectably off. If they lived in the richer areas of Arabia, which does not include the Hijaz, but if you lived in the Hijaz, then like the level for not being of the poor class, being of the kind of decent class was like 15 or 20 camels. So 5 camels would put you in the rank of the very poor, but not quite totally camelist poor. So it's not that much of a gift as it was, of course, because Muhammad had no money. It was what he could scrape together and not be utterly shameful. So it was not a large dowry according to the times. It was kind of it was barely above shame level for Khadijah, and his whole family like pitched together to provide him with enough for dowry, and he eventually paid it back. But that's the way it really, that's kind of how low that if Muhammad gives this much, then you must give less, right? Or at least no more than that. In talking about how little people should pay is there, because again, that lets men have sex with women with fewer strings. Anything that took away strings and made it easier for men to have sex legally, that was good in Muhammad's eyes, because it meant that his warriors were happy because they were getting lots of sex, and he wasn't losing any warriors going off to have sex and other conditions and things. So yeah, the value of a woman is very low, and the idea that everything is done for the men is absolutely true. One of the things, it is absolutely true that none of the slaves were legally allowed to be covered up in Muhammad's time. That's one thing ISIS did wrong. It's one of the only things that they did wrong. Their rape slaves had to wear the whole niqab, right? But the rape slaves of Muhammad would have been, at best, their hair and face uncovered, but most likely most slaves were kept in a condition of continuous humiliation and exploitation. They were topless. The toplessness of slaves was normalized, both in Arabia, the treatment of low castes, and it's the same reason that people who are in India, the low castes, when Westerners came, they were not allowed to cover up because it was a humiliation for the women to have to walk around with their breasts bare for every man to look at. And it's not breast bare for breastfeeding. That was pretty normalized in a lot of areas, if you weren't in certain groups, but rather that you were to always be exposed to the gaze of men in a kind of humiliation. And you could go all the way back to Assyria and find out about laws about if slave women wore a head covering, she would be put to death under Assyrian law, because it's all about the status and the exposure and the concealing of some and exposing of others. So yeah, it was an incredibly lustful and sex-filled society. And the idea of calling what is called marriage, well, it isn't even called marriage. It's called nikah, which means intercourse. It doesn't even mean marriage. But legal intercourse in Islam, just calling that marriage at all, it makes it a farce, because you have misyar nikah, which means that you're a traveler marriage. So you have like this part-time wife.
Yeah.
And you also have, you have the muta marriage, which isn't allowed in Sunni Islam anymore. It's still allowed in Shia, but Shia have misyar. How is misyar different from than your pleasure marriage? It's just another way of categorizing lustful activities of men as something that's okay to do. It's ridiculous.
You can marry a woman for one night as long as you pay for her, and if you have sex with a woman, you can just give her money once you pay her, and Allah forgives you.